Welcome to Until Saturday, the first Sunday Sound-Off edition. This week 0 is kind of a dry run for us because it wasn't a full slate of football games. So we got our opportunity to watch college football for the first time. We did a live show on Saturday night on YouTube, which should be in your podcast feed on Sunday morning while you're eating breakfast. And now we are going to unveil and start the first Sunday Sound-Off show, which is a live show every Sunday in between the last afternoon NFL games and the Sunday night football game, where we take your questions, your comments, your concerns, your criticisms, your anger. We play it on the show, and we just have a discussion with the people who support the show. And I can't be more excited that we are doing this. I am joined, as always, by Dave Ubben. Dave, how are we doing today?
We got some baby sleep issues. Maybe we'll tackle it at some point, but we're surviving.
Yeah, and apparently you have some choice words for Sam Khan Jr. over here, who's wearing a Babe's chicken hat. Sam, how we doing?
Well, it was much better before Ubben dissed Babe's chicken. I don't think I trust this guy anymore. So
who raised you, I think is what you said.
Who did raise you, Dave? Like, what's wrong with you? But Dave, I'm with you on the baby thing. We're actually, my soon-to-be 3-year-old, we're transitioning from the crib to the toddler bed for the first time tonight. So see how it goes. And school starts tomorrow. So it's going to be a fun night here at the Khan household.
It's called the sleep regression. You should go ahead and Google that. You're going to get real familiar with it. Now, I want to start off with a food take because we haven't really been doing much of these on the show since it returned, and I think it's an important staple. And Sam, you're probably going to be the one upset about this. I don't know what Dave's going to say. I never know. What Dave is a wild card with food. I think that fried chicken is the most easily duplicated in fast food form. Like, the difference between fast food fried chicken and the best fried chicken in the world is the smallest gap between like the best burger in the world and a hamburger, or the best pizza in the world and fast food pizza. Like, I just feel like fried chicken, like, I think you can make the case that Popeyes is among some of the best fried chicken in the world, and it's a fast food. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I think I'm with you on this because I think fried chicken is a low floor, low ceiling food. It's very good when it's very good. There's some terrible, you can screw it up where it's dry or it's soggy. I've had a lot of bad fried chicken in my life, but yeah, you go to like, the Korean fried chicken place that's charging you, $25 for like a quarter of a bird, or like the hipster place in the trendy part of town that's like a 3-piece meal for $20 versus KFC or Popeyes. The gap is not wide. I'm with you on this, Ari. I'm with you.
Sam?
I kind of see where you're going there. I think it's all about if you season it right, and and like you said, don't dry it out. You got to make sure to cook it all the way through, but also get it out in time where you're not drying the bird out.
It's the lowest drop off between the best in the world and the best fast food version. I just think it's all very similar, and Popeyes is delicious. So, KFC I haven't had in a while, because why would you go to KFC when you can go to Popeyes? But so anyway, I'm happy that I could start off with some takes. Jeff Fuller here from the comments is excited for some college football. I'm happy that we can get some food out there and really didn't anger anybody. So listen, before we get into the show, I always have to do my beginning spiel here, which is to remind everybody and to urge people to be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcast. Drop us a 5-star review and leave a question for your review, and we'll get it to the show. Obviously, these reviews help with the continued growth of this podcast and certainly mean a lot to all of us. And if you like watching live videos, if you are right now, obviously you do. And if you're listening to this in the podcast, you certainly have that option. You can find our YouTube channel, which is in the show's description. And as you're going to find out today, this is a sound-off episode where the fans and the people who support the show are going to get to sound off into the show. We are going to lean heavily to voicemails, because I think that we're all in agreement here, right, guys, that, listening to people talk and clipping their audio for the show is far more entertaining than reading off a tweet or a question. You can still text this number, which is 316-462-9852 if you want. And we certainly will read everything, but the voicemails are going to take priority. And before we keep going too, I just want to say, Chris, if you're out there listening to the show, I got your text, and certainly heartfelt, and we really appreciate your support, and it touched me this weekend. So lastly, before we dip in, we got a little bit of news, then we're going to get into the questions. But sign up for the Until Saturday newsletter on The Athletic. You will get your daily fill of college football news and takes and things of that nature from the Athletic staff. You don't have to be a subscriber to join the newsletter, and it gets right into your inbox every day during the week. So the links to all of these things are in the show description right here. Super convenient for you. Please just go subscribe to everything because, that's the lifeblood of this whole thing. So, all right, guys, we're going to do some quick news here, and then we'll get into the fun questions where we raise our voices. So who wants to tackle this first? Apparently on Sunday, Arizona State University, the hometown Sun Devils for yours truly, accepted or took a self-imposed postseason ban for the issues that it faced and the rules that it broke during the Herman Edwards era. What do you guys think?
So I got two thoughts on this. One, people want to get mad at the NCAA, so-and-so. Arizona State, what they were doing under Herman Edwards was actually bad. There's a pandemic going on that's killing people, and they basically and all of college football paused recruiting. There was no recruiting going on except for apparently at Arizona State and Tennessee, taking guys
and Michigan too, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. This is putting people in danger. This is putting your players in danger. It's putting their families in danger. This is not good. So this is not, this kid's, wanted to eat. And I gave him a $200 check. This is no one in the sport is recruiting. So let's start there, right? This is not your sort of normal everyday NCAA fare. Now, what I don't like is that you're penalizing guys that had nothing to do with this. From what I understand, this was not well received. This was not expected from the guys on the ground, the players. There's not been a lot of transparency on how the Arizona State leadership got to this end. And I think that the elephant in the room and sort of something that's emblematic of the state of college football is that Tennessee got out of a bowl ban in theory because they just paid $8 million. That was essentially like a 2-year bowl ban that they just paid out of. Arizona State, they wouldn't. I believe ESPN asked them for a comment. They declined to comment if they could have a similar thing. But I think the reality is that an $8 million check for Tennessee to cut is different from an $8 million check or whatever Arizona State was going to cut. And they may not have that in the budget right now. And so now, because of all of this, because of the sins of others, the current players are suffering. Not a fan, but again, don't do bad things. This is bad. This is actually bad.
The peril of trying to penalize people in the college football realm is that by the time these are usually completely fleshed out in terms of investigations and really knowing what happened, 2 or 3 years go by and the players who did those things are gone. And the only people that you're penalizing are the unpaid athletes that you're supposed to be supporting and helping flourish. And I don't know if there's
driven by the
anything
players
around it.
too.
Yeah.
This is coaches.
This is coaches. Yeah. But the funniest thing about it too, it was like, what are you going to do? Vacate wins? Like at a certain point, it's like the only thing that they can do. And I remember, you guys remember when we were in quarantine, right? And I was playing NBA 2K every day, or the golf game and I was living with my parents for the first time since I was 18, full time for a few months. You remember how serious the whole, everybody was taking the pandemic. And it's not that is right or wrong, but we were all very cautious, staying at home, quarantining, staying away from people, wearing masks. Like now that we're a few years removed from it, the severity of the illness and the way that people are treating it now is just much different. That mindset is changed. But in that moment, when everybody was doing their part to try to beat this thing, this is when all this was occurring. So it's very hard to put yourself back into your mind frame in 2020 when this was all going on and remembering how appalled you would have been at the time because it was a serious public safety issue at the moment. Now, you might not look at it this way now, but remember when this was occurring, this was like a huge and complete blatant disregard to the public safety.
This is like summer 2020. We're talking.
Yeah, this was like when it was scary as hell.
Yes.
Not that it isn't now, but like when everybody was like scared and at home and, I was afraid to go see my friends. I didn't want to get my parents sick. And they were just like going on visits and hosting people. It was a complete and utter disregard for human safety. That to me is the number one takeaway of this. So, Sam, is there anything that we're missing here that crossed your mind?
I think just the thing that frustrates me about this whole situation is how long it takes the NCAA to get through its punishment phase. Because we have allegations and we have investigations, and then the punishment is doled out again, to people who really didn't have anything to do with it. And
Mhm.
that's the frustrating part of this. I remember when Baylor went through its scandal at the end of the Art Briles era, and those sanctions weren't announced until 2021. And we were on 2 head coaches past Art Briles by that point. And actually 3 if you want to count the acting head coach in 2016. So and they had some, I think, some recruiting restrictions. There was generally light penalties placed on Baylor for that. But my beef is with how slowly the process moves, and thus you have a roster of Arizona State with 50 plus players who just came in, and now right before the season you're being told you're not going to be able to play in the postseason, and
a lot of those are
that could have been
seniors
a
too,
goal.
right?
Yeah, you got a lot of
20 or
seniors,
so.
and you could have that could be something you're aspiring to as this program tries to rebuild. So I think you guys are right in terms of you have to take this issue seriously. And any program that was doing recruiting during that dead period when everybody was not allowed to do in-person recruiting, obviously, I understand there needs to be consequences for that. But I just the pace at which these things move, regardless of what the issue, whether it's this, whether it's impermissible benefits or whatever we want to penalize teams for, it just moves way too slowly, and it ends up affecting people who weren't a part of it. And it's really unfortunate that we are in this place. And I don't know what the answer is, because you do have to have some level of accountability when rules are broken in order to keep some integrity, I guess, within the sport. But just the people not being a part of it, being penalized for it, it just really stinks.
And the
You know what I have
ringleaders
a
of all
hard
this
time-
too are Antonio Pierce and Herm Edwards. They're not coaching college football again. So if you drop a heavy show cause, you're not even really doing anything. Like, those guys are not coming back to college football. So the whole thing is just, it's not great.
I have a really hard time with this, guys, and help guide me through this. I couldn't care less about what Jim Harbaugh did, right? Like the hamburger thing or whatever that he's going to be missing 3 games for this year. Like the NCAA's punishment and his role in whatever happened there. Like, I wrote a column saying I couldn't care less about this. Let's just get this over with so we don't have to think about it anymore.
Well, before you go forward, Ari, he's being punished for lying.
Yeah, but
more than what he actually did.
But I'm not outraged by what he did, which is the point here I'm going to make.
Yes.
So if there's a Michigan fan or an Arizona State fan who's listening, they could see some inconsistency with my thought process, because I take what Arizona State did very seriously. Both occurred during the pandemic, if I'm correct on this. The difference in my mind is that Jim Harbaugh walked to a restaurant and met recruits, right? And like Arizona State was full blown, like having visitors on campus. So like traveling from out of state, even, I believe. So like that's the difference. But what Jim Harbaugh did, it was against the rules. He's being punished for those. He's being punished for lying, all those things. But I think that what Arizona State did, if you're going to compare it to Michigan, is just far more egregious and inappropriate. So I just wanted to put that out there and make sure that no one, commented, but actually. I don't like but actually comments. Well, actually. Okay, so the next piece of news before we get into the games and previews and all that stuff that we're going to talk about is the Mountain West Conference met with Washington State on Thursday, is planning on meeting with Oregon State. It's just 2 more Power 5 holdovers from the Pac-12 going to find a new home.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole situation is very complicated because is the Mountain West buyout 17 million or 34 million now? I believe they just
I think it became 34.
Yes. So if you want to be the Pac-4 or Pac-2 or whatever you are, we'll see what happens with Cal and Stanford, and you want to start bringing people over from the Mountain West, that's very expensive. They're not going to be up for that. If they were coming to the full-blown Pac-12, they'd find a way. But to come back to this weird thing where you have Oregon State and Washington State kind of driving the bus, for the Mountain West perspective, it probably makes more sense to bring them in. Maybe you rebrand. I don't know. But so, I think that these are some difficult decisions. Yeah, these are some difficult decisions with not a lot of great outcomes for Oregon State and Washington State. But these are going to be part of the machinations and the education process that you got to figure out, okay, what's our best move? And certainly do what they can to try and keep Cal and Stanford, which seems like a losing battle at this point.
I just want these guys to find home so it can stop.
Yeah,
That's
these
my
are two
thought process.
passionate programs with passionate fan bases, and it just thinks where they are at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out, but let's get into the fun stuff here. We are going to be answering your voicemails. And if you have been a little bit bashful about calling into the number, and I'll repeat it again, 316-462-9852, here's a little preview of what your beautiful voice would sound like if you actually had the courage to do it. I hope that as we go through this episode and we cut up these clips and I'm excited about it, and I want
It's
people
gonna
to
be
do
fun.
it. So please, if you're on the fence of doing it, what's the worst thing that can happen? You could sound like me and people make fun of you. Like, it's fine. Let's get to the first voicemail question of the Sound-Off era.
There always seems to be a team that gets the groupthink overvalue every year. Who do you think that is this year? And why is it Washington? Thanks, Jason.
I like that last drop you give it. Why is it Washington?
It really is Washington. Thank you so much, Jason, for the call. That was funny. You made people laugh on the first one ever. There does seem to be certain darling teams every single year where people just automatically kind of hitch their wagon to. I mean, I think there were a few people in the on the athletic staff, maybe at least one, or maybe a few, who picked Washington to make the playoff this year. And I know Michael Penix is there. And I know that Kalen DeBoer is a coach that's won a lot of games during his career, but like, are we going that far? And also, too, there's a few others that I want to put out there. We can talk about Washington first, but Texas Tech, everybody thinks Texas Tech is going to be really good. And they might be really good. But my experience, whenever you go through this and say, hey, this team that isn't usually very good is going to be awesome, that's not like they're supposed to do it the way TCU did it. They're not supposed to be expected to do it. Sam, I have a lot of respect for Joey McGuire. I love their staff. I love what they're doing.
Doesn't sound like you do, Ari.
No. I just like winning the Big 12 and being much improved and on the right track are very different things. So that's another one. Florida State is another one where everybody is like, okay, they're gonna make the playoff this year. And listen, I'm the only person on the athletic staff who picked Texas too, but at least they have the talent composite to back them up. But Washington does seem to be the main culprit here. Let's start with you, Dave. We'll start with your opinion of Washington, and then we'll flip over to Sam, and he can strangle me over my Texas Tech comment.
So I'm not gonna say that Washington will make the playoff. I don't think that they will. But if you're talking about them in the Pac-12 race, when we talk about this a little bit, on Saturday, Ari, I just think USC is gonna stumble. And somebody's got to be there to pick up the pieces. And if you're asking me who the next most likely team is, I like a 10-2, a 9-3 Washington to be holding up the trophy at the end of the year. I actually like that. USC, I just think this is going to be a flawed situation. I think there's going to be frustration. I have to wonder as well, Ari, like in the locker room, anytime you have these teams where you have this all-world offense and this defense, that's clearly the reason why they're struggling. Everybody's going to play nice publicly, but when the doors are closed and locked and the microphones are turned off, I have to wonder about those dynamics as well. You've seen and heard stories about that too. So, can Washington win fewer than 9 games this year? I mean, I guess it's possible, but I'll be surprised. So listen, if you're going to talk about them as a playoff team, I don't think so. But as a Pac-12 contender, I see it.
I just don't know who's going to win the Pac-12.
I don't either.
Because all the games that are big seem bunched together for everybody on the back half of the schedule. So like we're going to maybe get a nice little viewpoint of who's the favorite once we get through half the season. But I just saw USC play on Saturday night, and I thought I was watching reruns of the season of the defense from hell a year ago. And I'm looking at Washington's schedule right now. Boise State, supposed to be pretty good this year. I think that's kind of a tricky opener. You go on the road to East Lansing, Michigan State. Maybe they stink, but this is the way it works. And then you have Oregon in the middle of your season. Then you finish off with 3 consecutive games at USC, home at Utah, then at Oregon State, ending the year off with Washington State. So that doesn't seem like a breakout schedule to me. So if you think that Washington's defense is going to be good, I'm willing to listen to whatever argument that you have for that. But like when you think about groupthink and all basically just attaching your ship to that bandwagon, I don't know that there's been a lot of people on this podcast that really think that, right? So I hopefully we're a little bit different. I don't I think they'll be fun to watch. Penix as a rocket of an arm, and I think really when he hits that pass perfectly, he's got about the most beautiful ball that you could actually picture in the sport. I don't know if I'm buying all that hype. Okay, Sam, did I offend you with my Texas Tech stuff?
You're gonna blow your mind. Not at all. I'm actually in full agreement with you, Ari. I am high on Tech, but I do think we have gotten a little carried away. Apologies to Joey McGuire. I do think and I apologize to you, Ubben, because I think you picked them when we did our Big 12 preview. You got them
win the league.
Yeah,
it's not fair to them.
Could I see them sneaking into the Big 12 title game? Yes. Am I picking them to do it? No. I think Texas and Kansas State are the teams that are going to get in there. I think they're still another year away from being a true Big 12 title contender, because I do think the program is moving in that direction. But yeah, I do think we are in the race of college football media to find the next TCU or to find the next sexy program that's going to rise up out of nowhere, so to speak. A lot of people have jumped on Texas Tech, and I get it. Lots of production returning, veteran quarterback returning, almost the entire coaching staff returning. You got a head coach that you get the right vibes off of. The culture seems to be right. So I get it, but the Big 12 is really tough, and it's a slog to get through from week 1 to all the way to the end of the season. So I'm in agreement that I think we are overvaluing Tech to a certain degree, and there's so many, I think, people trying to pick them as a team that now I think we've probably talked about them a little bit too much at this point.
Now it feels like if they don't win the Big 12, it's a disappointment. It's like
I know. I think we're setting Joey up for failure here.
This is still the same team that they have not won 9 games since they fired Mike Leach after he won 9 games. So I think if you can get to that 9-10 win mark, and we'll see what happens in the Big 12 standings. I'm not, we'll see. If they're, will 10-2 get you?
Yeah, it's like Texas is number 1, and then everybody else after. Like, we know who's going to be first.
So Ari, we've talked a lot about Texas and Bama on this pod, but like I get the Texas talent issues, but or the talent case. But Ari, like the fact that every team in the Big 12 has Texas circled on their schedule.
You say Texas this every time.
Well, I know, but are you really comfortable with that they can hold up against this? Because I know you're on an island with the Texas play. Well, not really on an island. It's you and Dez and some other people, but generally,
me and Dez is me being on an island. Let's be honest.
Okay, fair enough. But
that's not the life raft I'm looking for here.
They're heavy Big 12 favorites. Like most people are picking Big 12, and I just think people that they're going to be ready to show up to play, and that there's not going to be an intensity gap between them and a handful of teams that got talent and skill and want to come and punch you in the face to start the season, to start the game. I just think there's going to be some games where they're down 10-0 5 minutes in. And
if you don't think that I'm nervous about where I'm at with this thing, I haven't effectively, I portray confidence in my opinions, but I'm very well. People are like, don't you think they could lose to teams that you don't know? Yes, I watch it happen every year. Of course, I know that can happen.
Real. It's real most years. It's doubly real this year.
Yeah, and it's I think it's a good segue because we're talking about Tech, and I believe that Texas plays on the road they're in Austin, the final game of the year, and that's supposed to be
Black Friday, I believe.
One of the biggest games in Texas Tech maybe history, right? They're already circling that out, and especially if there's a Big 12 championship game berth on the line of that game, I'm going to go there and watch it as a fan, maybe. Yeah. So that to me is a big deal. But yes, I'm fully aware of how it could go wrong for Texas. I've seen it go wrong that way 800 times, and I know the thing to me though is that I watched teams and I covered a team for 10 years where every single time they played another team, it was the other team's Super Bowl. So this isn't a revelatory concept to me. But when you are much better than them, it doesn't freaking matter. So if they're going to make the playoff, that's me having blind faith that they could potentially flip the switch and turn into the team that they have the talent to be. If they're actually going to be shocked by a 10-point deficit to Iowa State on the road because Iowa State's amped up to play the team that's leaving they're not good. They're not going to not make the playoff because of that factor. They're just not going to be good enough. So if they're good enough, that won't be a problem. And if they're not good enough, it will be. And we'll find out here shortly if that's the case. So next voicemail, here we go.
Hey guys, this is David from Chicagoland. Quick, which happens first question. Does Mel Tucker land a 5-star at Michigan State, or is he terminated first?
Ooh,
It's a tough call. I'm gonna say terminated by a no, just because at this point, getting some of that juice back and selling, hey, come here, we can do great things. That's a much tougher sell. When you flop in year 2 the way that they did, it's tough to come back from that. You have a special year 1. You go in the portal, you get Kenneth Walker. You make some hay with Peyton Thorne. You have a year that's better than people anticipate. But getting that juice back once it's been drained from the juice box it's tough. That's tough.
Okay, so we know why David asked this question, right? And it's a good one. It's a tough one. It's because David Stone committed to Oklahoma on Saturday during Week 0 games, and David Stone was their top remaining target on their board. And for the last 2 years, Mel Tucker has been promising to expand Michigan State's talent outreach to go after a certain caliber player. I got chastised by Andy on this podcast feed and by listeners by saying I think it's crazy that they're doing that. And then here we are 2 years later with questions like this. That said, I'm going to take that he will get a 5-star player first, because say what you want about Mel Tucker and the way that it's gone for him so far, the man has done a better job than previous coaching regimes, not when it was really humming under Mark D'Antonio, but, in this specific last 2-year run of getting interest for 5-star prospects enough to get them on campus. Samson Okunlola went last year. David Stone went this year. Like, they are getting legitimate big time 5 stars to at least look at them closely. And the reason why I'm taking the commitment was he didn't say sign, first of all, so that's a loophole. And second of all,
technicality.
I will say sign. The man's got a God contract. You're not going to fire him in the next 6 years. So, will it actually happen one time in the next 6 years? And Matthew C here in the comments, kind of echoing, can MSU afford to fire Mel Tucker any of the next 5 years? I don't think that they can. So, you have so much time. That time margin of things that can change in that time is just too big to just.
All right,
no.
with the Big Ten money, 6 years is generous. I'll say 2 to 3, where they just will not do it. But if you're still going 4-8, 5-7, 6-6,
just going to cut a check for $60 million like it's nothing.
Have you looked at the Big Ten money? Yes.
Yeah, no, I know.
You can't afford to keep losing like that. And the money that you lose if you have a losing program in a place that expects to win outweighs.
Well, let me ask
whatever
you.
You're going to lose. Yes,
Sam. Maybe you can tackle this because I love your opinions. Are you guys just out on Mel Tucker being good enough to keep his job? It's one thing to not sign a 5-star prospect, but is everybody just on Mel Tucker sucks now? Is that it? We've given up on him?
I'm not, certainly. But I agree with you, Ari. I do think David's right about the amount of money that Big Ten schools are going to have, especially after once this new broadcast contract kicks in. But that's still a lot of money to pay somebody to go away. And
still $60 million. I don't care how much
it's coming in. It is still a lot of money. The largest buyout
Texas A&M Jimbo buyout money right there.
Right. It's exactly dang near the same contract or same year and annual salary. Mm-hmm. The largest buyout to this date, I think, that we've seen paid out is what, $21 million? Is that the Gus Malzahn?
Gus Malzahn, 21.3, if I recall.
So
you're talking that's a hot take. That number is going down before
21 to 60. That's a huge gap. I agree with you. Is that you just need more swings at those 5 stars. You keep getting them on campus. At some point, I feel like if you consistently get them on campus, you eventually hit on one.
The thing that scares me is if you spend too much time and energy recruiting 5-star prospects that don't commit to you or don't sign with you, then you're not doing a good enough job recruiting the players that you need to get on your roster to be good at football. So that, to me, the number one currency in recruiting isn't so much the NIL dollars, it's the time that you spend and how effectively you use it. So that to me has always been the number one concern with Michigan State. But I also think too that with the amount of time we're talking about here, they've signed 5-star prospects before. I'm sure they'll do it again. So looking forward to seeing how that pans out. That was a good question. Thank you so much, David. Let's go to the next one.
Hey guys, this is Eric from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thought about calling in with a calculus problem for Ari to work through, but
absent that, I'm curious to get your thoughts on my Irish this year. How big of a prove-it year is it for Marcus Freeman? Last year, he had two quarterbacks that are now third stringers on different teams. Sam Hartman transfers in. All indications from the spring game were that he's looking great. He has a more developed offensive line at Notre Dame than he ever had at Wake Forest. So how much of this year for Marcus Freeman is it important to really hit double-digit wins to prove the program's headed in the right direction? And what happens if they go under on the 8.5 win total? Because at that point, I feel like in a lot of ways there's concerns, even if he's only in his second year. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks,
I
Eric.
want to know the calculus question.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes to watch me weasel when it comes to figuring out math problems. And maybe another day, like it'll be a bet where you can just give me like a high school algebra question and I'll put it on a whiteboard and you guys can watch me try to. I am terrified for when like my daughter starts getting rudimentary math homework because like I don't think I'm going to know how to do any of it. Certainly couldn't pass a single high school test in any subject right now. I couldn't pass a high school English test. I'm a sports writer. So, if that gives you an idea of like how I'm at, but listen, last year kind of felt like a disaster for Notre Dame. Like when you think about looking back at it and then you like, remember they won 9 games. Like if that was a disaster feeling year, then I think that maybe they're a little bit more ahead of the curve than we're giving them credit for. So we watched the game on Saturday. It was a complete blowout. Sam Hartman looked awesome. Offensive line looked awesome. Receivers were catching passes. No tight ends caught any passes. Thought it was a very good first game for them. But, what do you think, guys, that Notre Dame has to do this year to be successful or to be viewed as a success? And will they do it?
Yeah, I think that double-digit number will do a lot for him to shut people up. Because I think when it comes down to, for me, is when you look at this team, okay, 9 wins is acceptable, I guess. You're still going to have grumbling depending on how those losses happen and who they are. But there's not a compelling reason why this team can't win 10 games. And if it doesn't, where's that finger going to be pointing? Right at the head coach, because you've got all the pieces. The schedule, Notre Dame's schedule is Notre Dame's schedule. It is what it is. Brian Kelly navigated it. This isn't that much different of a schedule. So if you're not getting there to, 10 wins or close to it or 9 wins, and maybe you lose to Ohio State by a little bit, or, you get nipped by USC, we'll see. There's not an excuse for why you can't do it with this team and with this schedule. So that to me says yes, because if you're sitting there at 8-4, I mean, prove it year, you're starting 2024, I think pretty squarely on the hot seat.
Yeah, I think momentum is so important, right? When you're starting an era, it's important. The recruiting momentum is important, but on-field results matching that recruiting is really important. And so, I think Marcus Freeman is I think he gives good vibes, and I think you looked at the way that program looked on Saturday. They looked competent. They did what they were supposed to do. Dominant performance, clean game, and you like it starting that way. You got to keep that momentum going. And I think winning 9 games or 10 games, it gives you some really good momentum going into the future, and it helps give positive vibes around your program. Because if you end up 8-4 or worse, then you have a lot of people asking questions. And so, I do think I think it is a big year, because also remember once upon a time we used to hire coaches, we used to say, give them 3-4 years to get your guys in. We don't do that anymore. It's a different world now. And so really year 2 is when you got to start showing some progress.
Yeah. The thing that is interesting about last year is, they did win 9 games, but I think the most important thing when to consider Notre Dame season last year is that they didn't win 10 because they lost to Marshall and Stanford. Like, I think that to me is the more pertinent issue than, what their total record was. And the interesting thing here now on the flip side for 2023 is that if Notre Dame is going to reach 10 wins this year, that means that they have to beat one of these 3 teams. Ohio State, USC, both of those games are at home, and then a road game at Clemson. Are they going to go 1-2 in those games this year? I think I like Notre Dame to have a really good shot to beat USC after what I saw last night. And in the afternoon game too, like the combination of how good Notre Dame looked and how poor USC's defense looked at the same day on week 0 kind of makes me think that's a possibility. But that's a pretty tough proposition. If you feel like your back's against the wall to win 10 games this year, you got to beat one of those teams, and it's not going to be easy to beat any of them.
Well, I think too, part of this is, with the whole Marcus Freeman conversation. Okay, you lose in the bowl game. You don't look great against Ohio State, but then that Marshall loss, you're 0-3, and it felt like the walls were caving in on Notre Dame.
Mhm.
And like to get out of that place where everyone's like, I don't know that this is the guy, and that's like the overwhelming the overwhelming perception of your program. You got to have like a big time, ride home about win, and Clemson, does a little bit of that for you, but not quite enough. And you need like a season with some big time wins to get to prove that, hey, we are this, because when you start the way that he started, you dig yourself such a big hole. I mean, that Marshall loss, even though Marshall was a good team, the perception of that, you're still feeling the effects of it if you're Marcus Freeman.
Didn't Marshall get dump trucked by a bunch of bad teams after that win last year? Am I just making that up?
Let me look. I don't believe so.
I don't know. It doesn't change your point, but
Yeah.
I just they lost to Bowling Green the following week after beating Notre Dame.
That did.
But I guess that's
but you still at 9-4.
Yeah, they did go 9-4. So here's the thing: the walls felt like they were closing in on my household too, because I wagered a large chunk of money that they would just win that game live in the third quarter, and it didn't go well for me and my family and my wife and my marriage. So I'll never forget that game. And I was like Shooter McGavin on the whatever. Oh, like that. So
Ari wakes up in a cold sweat thinking about Kalen LeBourne every now and then.
Yeah, no, there are some of those games where just kind of like, the hell, what happened here? Okay. Next questions will be 2 in a row here. I think they're kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Josh from Columbus, Ohio. I was just trying to see what your guys' perfect setup for a Saturday is. You guys like to have the food that you're going to eat right there at noon, or do you like to have it come in at 3:30? What's your preferred drink of the day? And thanks for the great podcast. Talk to you soon.
This is Matt calling from Los Angeles. Ari, Dave, love the show. Glad you guys are back. Ari, you're my favorite just because you give so many self-depreciating personal anecdotes, which I think you should keep it up. We need more of your not wearing shoes when people come over stories. My question is that I cook every Saturday during the fall for all my friends. I get, 5 to 15 people over, and I always cook for everybody. So I want to know, if you were coming to a friend's house, what would you want him to cook? What's the foods that you'd want to have to watch football? Because it's always a big thing for me. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
I'm not wearing shoes right now, and I really don't know what the big deal is. Like, I don't understand, why you have to cover your feet as a man when people come to your house. We're just lounging. We're just watching games. I mean, I'll never understand this, but apparently it's an issue. Okay, I like those 2 questions because they're different. They're the same, but they're different.
Yes.
And thank you so much for asking those questions, guys. Appreciate that. When you're at home, what is your ideal setup, guys?
So it's sort of complicated because we are out covering games, and I haven't been able to sit and watch a weekend as a fan in a long time. So that's sort of complicated. But for me, I don't like to, if it's not like a party situation, if it's just like I have time at home, my move, if I'm on a home Saturday, my move has always been late big breakfast to get you to night. I don't want to do like the afternoon like food run or be cooking stuff while games are on. I do like the big breakfast. Sometimes I will cook it at home. Sometimes maybe you go get like a couple chicken biscuits, something along those lines. Have you guys eaten the breakfast crunch wrap at Taco Bell? I'm telling you, it might hold the belt as the single best fast food breakfast item. It's incredible. So, and in general, I go big breakfast. As for the second part of the question, you got to have something that is not texture dependent. So nothing fried, nothing crispy. A pulled pork is a big time winner. I have some friends here that on Saturdays, they're big Tennessee fans, and they cook whatever the mascot is for when they have people over, something tied to that. Sometimes it gets a little complicated, but most of the time they can manage.
Yeah, it's to echo David. When I am not at a game on Saturdays, I'm actually in my office watching the games because we're trying to actually work. But if it's just a day that I'm able to actually sit and watch and not have to monitor games, so to speak, and just enjoy the games, like you, I am definitely a big breakfast guy. So maybe some really good breakfast tacos, something hearty to get me started. And like I said, it would be late because probably deep into game day, and then I'm in that probably eating next in that late afternoon window, like he said, the 3:30 time. And if I'm going to somebody's house and I want somebody to make something, I want a really good dip. Because if we're in a party situation and we got a bunch of people around, you want something accessible. Get some chips and get either like a good 7-layer dip or like a buffalo chicken dip, something like that you can go in and just grab. Finger foods, I think, are really key if you're going to have people over. Wings are a go-to staple. If you have somebody that can make some good wings.
Can't believe we're like 3 minutes into this answer and the word wings was just made up for the first time. Like, what are you guys doing here? I heard crunch wrap, breakfast wrap before wings. Like sometimes I just feel like I should take my computer and throw it against the wall.
Than a party situation. I'm not going to roll out the crunch wrap.
Guys.
The wings are a great option.
Guys. You're both wrong. Okay.
Okay. I want to hear this.
So when I was a kid, we used to have football parties where we'd have people come over, and my dad, it's like peak happiness of my dad. We would have appetizers and breakfast combo. So and I remember I was on Pacific time back when I was growing up. So my schedule was just different when I was a kid because the first games kicked off at 9 a.m. when I was a kid. So we would have bagels and, all the carbs that you'd want in breakfast, pancakes, all that stuff, right? Like around 7:30 in the morning when people woke up. Then you hit around the first quarter as the day starts to warm up and we start getting closer to noon. That's when you start getting your pigs in the blanket, your buffalo wings, your dips, all the regular appetizers. And then, we'd even go there was this place that used to be open in Phoenix that made a really good pepperoni roll that you could only find in Phoenix, in the Pittsburgh area where it was warm and this. My dad would go get it. He'd warm it up in the oven. Thing would be gone in 30 seconds. And then the timing of the call for the pizza delivery is the most important. Okay.
Yep.
You want to hit that call right after the bands come off of the field during the halftime show, because that way it doesn't arrive during halftime and it doesn't arrive right when the third quarter is starting. But if it's a close, good game, we're on the roller coaster up of excitement, this pie arrives with about 7 minutes and 31 seconds left in the third quarter. Somebody who's not as engaged in the game, which was my mother at the time, there's always one that's at the house, goes and gets the pizza, sets it up nicely while everybody watches the game. It's like a buffet style. You open up the boxes and you put them on the kitchen island. You put the plates on the side. You got the whole thing. And then during the next commercial after that 7-minute mark, everybody goes and gets their pizza, and then you eat like a savage for the rest of the game. And then hopefully you're stuffed by the time the fourth quarter is in the middle of it. Like that.
All right, nobody else in my family likes sports, so this is the dilemma that I am in. I grew up in a house where nobody else likes sports. My wife doesn't like it. Yeah.
I can tell with that crunch wrap bullshit. What are we talking about here? And it's pizza and wings is literally what football's made of. But there's a second part, and everyone's like, do you not own grills? It's yeah, burgers and hot dogs are good, but
if you're trying to watch the game, that's hard.
I really
here's the cheat code. Here's the cheat code. We talk about having people over. The cheat code is don't cook. And if you're in Texas like I am, you go find one of your great barbecue restaurants and just order a whole brisket that's ready to go and bring that over. And guess what, man? Everybody will eat like kings. But yes, the pizza and wings, I'm definitely, as I was talking before Ari lost his mind about the wings, he's right about the pizza call. The late afternoon, early evening pizza hits like nothing else.
And then you over order it too, so that there's still some left over for the night games. This is an amateur hour.
Pac-12 after dark with pizza.
Yeah.
Now, Liam did ask us what the ideal wing sauce or rub is. I feel like I'm going to get roasted for this take. I don't particularly like buffalo sauce. I'm a barbecue wing guy. Am I going to get killed for this?
Oven. What are we doing here? You don't like babes. You don't like regular buffalo sauce. What is up, man? Did you grow up on Mars, man? What the heck?
What was your ideal sauce?
I'm a barbecue, a honey barbecue guy.
I'm with him on this. I think that the regular buffalo sauce is the most overrated flavor.
Oh
of all
my
food.
gosh, you guys! What kind of existence? You guys
I'm
have
a garlic
up?
Parmesan barbecue guy.
I like a novelty wing. Listen, Buffalo Wild Wings is doing it right. Yeah, I don't know how it took until 2021 for them to sell their sauces in stores. You have to go. When I got an air fryer, I would make wings at the house, get the honey barbecue, and then you could make them. They were as good, if not better, than what you got at Buffalo Wild Wings. But it took for a while there. You had to go buy it like in the actual Buffalo Wild
ready
Wings.
for the most simpleton opinion of all time that I'm actually like ashamed of? Like I wear the Domino's cheesy bread on my chest and like a man, and I'll walk into my favorent wing sauce is Asian Zing from B-Dubs.
It's really,
Like,
really good.
It's
really
really,
good.
really,
There's no doubt.
really good. And then there was one last part of this, then we'll get back to it. But if you go to somebody's house and you're not hosting the party, you're going. That was another question. What do you like? What is your ideal setup at that other person's house? For me, the answer is the same, but I can understand like if you don't want to cook or you don't want to barbecue, burgers, hot dogs, and chips and all that stuff. You got to have the finger foods. You got to have the pizza rolls. But I think burgers and hot dogs on the grill is probably the best thing that you can hope for when you're going to somebody's house who's cooking.
You need something that's going to be good for most of the day too. So don't sleep on, especially once you get cold, just the crock pot chili that you can sort of just kind of make multiple visits to. Little fixings on the side, a lot of Fritos. Throw the Fritos in there. Like, that's going to be good all day, and it's only going to get better as the day goes on.
One of my buddies has a great chili recipe. When it gets cold, very rarely down here in Texas, but when it does get cold, I like to start up that chili on a late fall Saturday, and it's awesome.
Legit, like, some of my favorite memories of my young family is just fall days with my wife cooking chili. Because, you know, that smell, it's like it kind of vibes really well with the pumpkin candles that are always firing up in our house. By the way, we spend roughly $1,200 annually on pumpkin candles. I hope you guys are on board with this, but we let it fly with the pumpkin candles in our house. Okay, next question.
Hold on, real quick. Oven's going to
go
tell me that he likes beans in his chili. That's what I'm expecting now.
No, I'm with you on this one, Ari. I'm with you on this one, Sam.
Wait, what's wrong with beans in the chili?
Ari's
just not in if we're in Texas, you don't do that. No beans.
Ari's an Ohio sleeper cell that's like getting away with living in Texas. He's not Texas enough. I was there for 9 years.
I'm not Texas enough yet.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Do you own cowboy boots?
Me? Come on, Ari.
Okay, I got just a quick story, and then we'll go to the next thing. But I went to a wedding in Hallettsville, Texas, a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's okay. Now
that's Texas, right? I mean,
yes.
we drove to Waco. We got off the highway. We were off for 2.5 hours. We weren't even on a main highway. So we get to this wedding, and as you can imagine, being in this state, everybody was not everybody, but a lot of people were wearing the Wrangler jeans, the cowboy shirt with the plaid.
Bolos, baby, bolos.
Yeah, they had the boots going on. They had the boots going on. They had the wallets that stick out halfway, you know, like those long bifold wallets, like it's a checkbook wallet with the buttons on it, like the whole deal. So we were on the shuttle to the wedding, and I'm like wearing a button-down shirt tucked in with a belt and khakis, like, you know, somebody in the Midwest or Southwest might, maybe more so the Midwest, but just a regular wedding attire. And there was somebody that was wearing this stuff on the shuttle. So I got friendly with him and whatever. My wife is sitting there, and you know how I get, you know, try to be funny a little bit. But I asked him, so what do you do for work? And he said he manages apartment buildings. And I said, oh, so do you wear that type of stuff all the time? Or just like, because I'm just trying to figure out what the cowboy thing is in this state. If you don't work with cattle, well, what is it, like a fashion statement, or is it application? Why?
Cowboy boots are legit fashion here.
Yeah, Ari, Texas is Texas.
They're also expensive.
Dallas is not Texas. Dallas is just Atlanta.
I know.
Dropped in North.
No,
Texas.
Dallas is Scottsdale in North Texas.
Yeah, basically. But like Fort Worth is Texas. You get an hour outside of any of the metroplexes, you're in like Texas.
If you work at Charles Schwab, there's no reason why you should be wearing garb that you would find on Yellowstone.
Yeah, that's fair.
But why do they wear it? It's fashion.
Sam, you'll have to speak more to Houston because I haven't spent a ton of time there. But Houston is like kind of a little bit. It's not like quintessential Texas, but it's very, very different from Dallas. So, and San Antonio, I'll say is basically Texas. But Dallas is not Texas. So Ari, you're insulated.
But somebody explain to me what the reason for wearing the cowboy garb is if it's not application. I would feel like that stuff is exactly what you would want to wear if you're working with livestock. And if you're not,
it's the same reason why do you have off-road tires on your truck? Why do you have a giant truck if you're in Texas? It's just
I don't have off-road tires on my truck.
I know, but there's a lot of people that do that, like work at like Arby's or something. It's like, that's
All right,
just
why
like,
do you and I wear J's? We don't play basketball. What the heck? I mean, it's the same concept.
I guess so. It's a fashion statement.
there
It's
you
exactly.
go.
Thank you. Bingo. It is, and it's a mentality.
Okay, so
it's a mentality.
so the
Putting out the
cowboy
vibes.
boots, cowboy garb is a fashion statement.
Yeah,
and
putting out the
it's a
vibes.
representation of just where you are. It's a geographic thing here in Texas. So
Yeah,
it's just.
I mean, I
part of the
think it looks
culture.
good. I wish I could pull it off. I certainly couldn't, but I just
I think Ari messed with Texas and lived to tell the tale.
no. He actually was a really cool dude, and we sat next to each other at the wedding and had a great time. And I hope he'll be my friend for a long period of time. But it's just like, if you've ever met me, like, that is the exact opposite of my persona. I'm like a hoodie and gym shorts guy in the wild. So, okay, another voicemail.
Hey, very excited for the season. This is Jordan from Columbus, Ohio. Obviously an Ohio State fan. I was very intrigued with the USC Lincoln Riley conversation, and I think that, as far as USC being soft in their defense, that both, Ari and Dave were right. My question, keeping with USC, is do you think that under Lincoln Riley, USC can ever reach Oklahoma? What he did there. I'm starting to lean towards no, because, he is he's going to be one of the best, but the Pac-12 this year is harder than what the Big 12 was when he was there. And then moving into the Big 10, that's also going to be harder. And if he continues, as, I guess Ari was saying, with being soft, and he has to face, Iowa, he has to face Wisconsin, although a little bit different. He has to go to Illinois in November on top of you have Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Can he ever get to the level where he is making 3, 4, 5 straight playoffs? Or does that not matter because they're probably going to make it with the 12-team playoff? I'm just very interested in that because, with Oklahoma, he did everything he could but win a national championship. But I wonder if the ceiling is lower if he is going to not, change the defensive coordinator, if he's not going to try to get tougher, recruit the offensive defensive line. I could see there being more kind of surprise upsets, going to Purdue in November if they keep the spoiler makers and that kind of stuff being in the Big Ten. Thanks as always.
I'll help him out. No, not happening. Not
Aren't they
happening.
already there?
Well, I mean, kind of. I mean, I just think at the end of the day, what he did at Oklahoma, he did because, and Ario loved this, they had a lot more talent than everybody else, and you're going up against, your chief rival is a Texas program in complete disarray. That's all over the map.
And it didn't matter at all that everybody circled their game on the calendar, right?
Well, I don't think Oklahoma does not inspire the same rage as Texas does. People don't relish beating Oklahoma in the same way that they relish beating Texas. There is an arrogance around Texas and a hatred around Texas that Oklahoma does not face. Oklahoma is the class of the Big 12. People don't resent that. People in the Big 12 resent that Texas is treated like a king when they play like plebeians more often than not. And so did I
poke you?
No, you didn't. I'm pointing out why I'm pointing out why you're wrong, Ari. I'm very familiar with the Big 12. The culture is different. People hate Texas in a way that they do not hate Oklahoma. So no, Lincoln, I think they moved to the Big 10. You're going against, I don't know what geographically is a complicated question. And the 12-team playoff we can sort of throw out and say, are they going to get to the Final Four frequently? No, they're not. I think he can still cook and win Heisman trophies and do all that stuff because his offense is so good. The play calling last night was unbelievable. Like the situations they put him in and the route combinations, that touchdown pass to Dorian Singer, the play design was fantastic. So he can still keep doing that, but no, they're not going to be doing what they do because there's more competition. If they were in the Pac-12, I would have said yes, but the Big 10, no, because you're going to have too many big guys out there that are going to be just a lot more capable than Texas.
And also making the 12-team field isn't going to be the same thing as making the 4-team field.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't care about making the 12-team field. Can you get to the Final Four? And
you got to get to the Final Four.
Not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, getting to the Final Four when having to win games in that setting is harder than getting to the Final Four in the current system. So, to me, that is something that we need to acknowledge. So, but do you think that USC is going to be one of the 3 best programs in the Big Ten eventually? And, be a team that can actually win a national championship, I think that's on the table for sure. Like I right now have lost all faith or most faith in their ability to field a defense that can win a national title this year. But if they do somehow figure out a way to field a really good D and everything on offense stays the same, then you're telling me that they can't be better than Michigan State and Penn State to be the second or third best team in the conference. Like I think that they absolutely could reach that level. And he's going to have plenty of time to figure that out. So, I think that Lincoln Riley, like you said, was a beneficiary of playing in a conference that just didn't bring the challenges to it. There was no boogeyman at the end of the Big 12 schedule because they were it. But now there's a Ohio State, a Michigan, a Penn State, a Wisconsin, all these teams in that league, Michigan State, when they're good. Like, it's hard to run through that league, but also too, there's 97 teams in the Big 10 now. So also, you don't have to play all of them in your schedule anyway. So, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But like my expectation, and the reason why I bet Andy $1,000 they would win enough to make the playoff in the first 3 years of Riley's tenure is because Pac-12 stinks or had stunk coming into this year. But also because I thought they were going to recruit like maniacs and be the number one transfer destination for any quarterback ever. And so far that's already kind of held true on the transfer part, but not the recruiting part. So, I think the question should be simplified is, do you have any confidence whatsoever in Lincoln Riley figuring out how to field a coordinator or keeping a coordinator and fielding a defense that can stop somebody ever? Because that's the answer. Yeah. That's the answer to the question.
And the reality is that getting the 12-team playoff is not going to be enough for a program like USC. They're not going to be happy with that. Some programs will be, and they should be, but USC is not. And so that's, he's not going to be able to just get into the 12-team playoff 2 out of 5 years, and people will be like, oh, good job, here's an extension. That's not how that's going to work.
Sam, who's more screwed? Texas to the SEC or USC to the Big Ten?
I think USC to the Big Ten, because I think Texas is actually starting to build its roster the way it needs to for SEC competition. Like, you look at I remember the very first year Sark got there and looking at that roster compared to SEC teams that I saw, and it just wasn't up to snuff. And now
talk dirty to me, Sam.
And you watch them practice, buddy. They look different. They look like.
What do they look like, Sam?
They look big. They look fast.
But what? If you had to say like what they look like, what do they look like? What type of team?
They look like an SEC team. They're starting to look like an SEC team. I'm not going to say a playoff team, Ari. I know you're on that bandwagon. I am not there.
You tease.
Get to the Big 12 championship game first, and then let's take baby steps first. Let's get to a Big 12 championship game, which we haven't done since 2018, and then we'll talk. But no, I think Texas is a little bit better set up because of the way they've recruited so far. And their defense, you guys watched that defense last year against Alabama in that second game of the year, and really throughout most of the season, that defense was really good last season. They've got a really good team.
The thing that's so funny to me is that they are a heavy favorite to win their conference. The winning the Big 12 and making the playoff aren't that far apart. Like, if you win the Big 12,
they're more apart than you think they are, Ari.
I mean, maybe they are, but like, it's like if you can like wrap your mind on the idea of like, of course they're going to win the Big 12 this year. If you can get to that point, it's not that much of a further of a leap to say they're only going to have one loss when they do it.
Here you are. If they lose to only Bama, roll the rest of the Big 12, they're going to the playoff. If they beat Bama, lose to some stupid team, and still win the Big 12, they're probably still going to the playoff because they'll get credit for that Bama win. That will be huge for them. But I think they lose 2 games at minimum. So I don't think they're getting there, but they can still win the league. But it's, we'll see. I do think it is funny when we're talking about playoff teams, because I'm going to TCU's practice on Friday, and it's like that Michael Scott thing, or I forget which show it was, where they said you're not acting like a manager. And it said, well, I am the manager, so technically everything I do is a manager. So I'll be seeing a playoff team on Friday already.
Yeah, well, you let me know. I'm so excited for the season to start, because they podcast after their first loss. Is going to be absolute podcast gold, but it might not
be after the Bama game. They're beating Bama. I'm sorry. They're going to beat.
They're 7-point dog, buddy.
With me. Yeah, congrats to them. They're still going to win. Like, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know who you hate more this year, Texas or Bama. And by the way, real bold strategy as a new podcast co-host to come out hating both of those schools. Really, really awesome for the reviews.
Also hated the Rose Bowl, if you didn't remember that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Rose Bowl sucks. Texas sucks, and Bama sucks.
I never said the Rose Bowl sucks. I just said Rose Bowl people. chill out a little bit.
You got anything else you want to talk about? You don't care about world hunger?
Yeah. Well, I already busted out my half joking Paul Rudd sucks quote or
I don't know if we have any other questions. But we have
got some written ones, Ari.
Written ones. Let's just hammer these ones out real quick. We're gonna go a little bit over an hour, but that's okay. Let's do the written ones because we still do them. Christopher S. via The Athletic. Sorry, I always say via. Super League is actually better than the majority of college football, not worse. 32 teams leave, taking top 25% of all players and headaches of salaries, big NIL, big transfer portal with them. Rest of college football reverts back to regional rivalries, less stress chasing money, trying to keep up, and return to realistic coaching salaries and conference sizes. It's actually better for the teams that get left behind because they never are going to win a championship in this world anyway. Tell me why I'm wrong. Christopher S. on The Athletic.
I'm torn on this because this new world, I just don't really know. I know that it's going to be something very different from what made me love college football. And there's going to be a lot of big time baller games that are going to be fun to watch. But I just think that whatever's left behind, and we'll see. My nightmare scenario is that the Big Ten and the SEC go do their own thing and then refuse to even play anybody else. That I don't ever want to happen. But if that does happen, it's going to be hard to not feel like that's the Premier League and everybody else is the MLS. Where there's going to be people that care about it and they'll be talking about highlights. It's going to be awesome, but the whole thing is just going to kind of feel a little bit cheap and kind of weak. And this is just not, it's the same reason why the Group of Five doesn't start their own playoff, because they don't want it to be an off-brand. They want to be fighting for that big stage. So, maybe the 12-team playoff can keep that. I'm going to say TBD on that. I don't know that I buy that it's better for the smaller teams. I think being at that adults table and, having to prove it on the field and say, hey, you're going to have to come beat us to prove it. And every now and then they don't.
Sam?
Yeah, I think if we are able at some point to get back to the regionality and the rivalries that we had and the setup that made us really love college football, I think that's a good thing. But a lot of this sport is built on hope. And I get it that most of these teams that we're talking about that would get left out of a Super League are not going to win a national championship. We know that. But it doesn't mean that you can't dream for it. And that's really, I think, what keeps a lot of the fans into it, that one day your team can get up. That's why the realignment stuff has been so critical. Because those teams that have been in the non-power conferences want to get up to the big conferences because eventually they want to say, well, we can do it too. They want to be like TCU. TCU 25 years ago got left out of the Southwest Conference, and then they went in the WAC, and they went in Conference USA, and they went in the Mountain West. And then eventually they got to the Big 12 and
the Big East. You forgot the Big
10,
East.
10, 11 years. The Big East for – tell me your favorite Big East memory for TCU, David Oven.
Yes.
But they 11 years later, they got to the national championship game, and sure, they got pounded by Georgia, but they got there, and that matters.
They did something, and it matters.
It meant
I'm
something
with you,
to so many people. And so if you create a Super League, you lop off 2/3, 3/4 of those teams that have that chance to hope and dream that they'll get there. Even if they don't, I get that they won't, but it's the same thing about when the Super League and the Premier League got shut off. And I think I can't remember who wrote the column a few years ago when the fans revolted against it, but think about TCU was kind of like a team like Leicester City. Leicester City went from relegation to promoted in the Premier League and then ended up winning the Premier League title. It's so rare that it happens, but when it does, you got to savor it. The Boise States of the world who beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. Those things are really charming about college football. And if you just turn it into a Super League, it's just a mini NFL, and it's still going to be entertaining ball. Don't get me wrong, but it's not what the sport is supposed to be.
Sam, my favorite thing about working at The Athletic is writing dueling columns against you. We wouldn't have one this time. I'm with you 100%. And here's the thing that always gets lost in the discussion, and it blows my mind. It gets lost in the discussion of the expansion of the playoff too. I 100% bought in with the idea of hope. Hope is what gets them through the summer, what they think could happen in the future and, what they're building toward. But these teams that technically don't have a chance to win the national championship still do serve a purpose. And you guys know what that purpose is? It's upsetting the teams that are in the Super League. That is what makes the sport fun. We are killing the upset. I don't want the upset to go away. I don't want every team that, your favorite team in the Super League loses to be a rational thought of like, oh, okay, well, they lost to a good team. Like, part of the charm of the sport is getting your ass kicked by a team that stinks or a team that isn't going anywhere. And by the way, those teams that aren't winning the national championship this year, their entire years are made by it. You think App State's upset that they didn't win the national championship at the FBS level back in whatever year that was? Because
2007.
2007, which is holy shit, we're old. But like,
It's tough.
I mean, like, it is like the purpose of this system and the way that it works right now isn't only to serve every individual fan base. You know, these bottom feeder programs serve the big teams. So I don't know. Vaughn here, our boy that hung out with us here in Vegas last year. I was upset if Ohio State years ago would be meaningless with the new format. And it's like, that's true. That's why I'm with you. It's like, maybe Iowa fans would still like love it and have a great time that night, but it wouldn't have ruined Ohio State's season. Ohio State still would have made the playoff. It's like, nobody talks about that when I feel like I'm the only one. Who's with me?
Remember when South Florida got all the way to number 2 in the rankings, in the BCS rankings? Remember when West Virginia was this close to possibly getting, I think it would have been they got in the national championship game if they would have beaten Pitt.
Them and Mizzou were on the doorstep. I do think that is the worst loss in college football history. The most painful loss in college football history. 13.
This is a really good topic here, guys. Lewis here said the talent drain from the transfer portal will kill upsets. That's an interesting thought. And I wonder if we'll ever get to that point where the teams that have one or two really good players that kind of turn out to be the difference in these upsets are just not on those teams anymore once they make it, which, I guess is kind of a doomsday scenario, but I do still think that, players will stay.
I don't fully buy that because I think there's enough players that come back. There's enough players that go from the power conferences to the group.
I think he's predicting a world where everybody who's good on a middle tier team does what Jordan Addison did.
Yeah, if that happens, that would stink. I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to get used to you guys. Like, I don't feel like
what if Michael Crabtree transferred and finished his career off at Bama? Like, that's what he's talking about.
But
speaking of teams that finished, they were number 2 at one point. Texas Tech.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say earlier in the show, the last time Texas Tech played the biggest game in school history, they got punked and gave up 60 points to a very good Oklahoma team. But, like, I don't think the portal has really impacted the competitive balance all that much in big picture. There's certainly, like, the Jordan Addisons of the world. And
it's still very young, though, man. It hasn't.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
So
in 7 years, is it just going to be like, well, I don't have any scholarships from the SEC, so I'll just take the only scholarship that I have from the Sun Belt or the MAC. And I'm really well, maybe those are even too small conferences. I'll just take my Big 12 scholarship and go play for Texas Tech, and I'm going to have an awesome freshman year. And then when I get 9 different SEC teams coming at me with money to come transfer there, that'll take the best scholar. Like, if that is the end of the world, that would stink. But I just I just miss old college football already. I'm just like old.
I'm with you, Ari.
I
like the playoff, but the realignment is killing me.
We're just fiddling with it too much, and it's just all at once, and it's hard for me. Okay, I think we've got one final question in written form. Laughable via Apple Podcast. This is a podcast review. Okay, as I understand it, sites like 247 rate kids based on projections to the NFL. Would rankings change dramatically if the rating was based purely on projection within college? For example, a guy may not have a prototypical wide receiver body, but that matters much less in college. Why not leave NFL projection until we have 3 or 5 years of tape at the next lowest level versus skipping over the most important format 3 to 5 years? Which I think is a really interesting question. Like, there is a major difference between being a badass college football player and being a first-round draft pick. Like, when I covered Ohio State, I thought the best player that ever played there in the 10-year period was Braxton Miller, and that guy wouldn't have sniffed playing quarterback in the NFL. So like, that is the question. So my number one take here on this is, and this is what happens when you leave a happy review, you get to be on the show. Thank you. If you leave a bad one, I just
do that Hannibal Lecter sound effect again.
No, we're good. We're good.
I got a lot of good feedback from that Hannibal Lecter sound. My pet peeve is when we get bad reviews for things that make no sense. Just like, but reviews are reviews, by the way. If you think that you're going to leave a 1-star review and it's going to like ruin everything we're working on, like, total reviews also helps too. So you're helping us indirectly in a good way too. So if you want to leave a bad review, go for it. The reason why,
don't.
well, I'm just saying, like, the more reviews, that means the more people listen to it. And if you want to be like, Dave Ubbins' shirt was too bright last week, 1 star. It's like, come on, man. It's like, you know, we're really working hard at this and we want it to be good. So, the reason why NFL draft projections are taken into account when we do the rankings here, or when we use the rankings, is that general athletic ability and being able to project to that level translates directly to how good you are in college. So I think, like, I understand what you're saying. It's like, well, like, you know, who's the perfect example of this, Sam? Is Haas Haney.
I was wondering if you're bringing him up.
Yeah, three-star prospect who's committed to TCU, and I watched him at the Elite 11 Open or regional in Austin with Sam a few months ago, and Sam pointed him out to me and said the kid's a stud. He went out and not only kicked ass at the camp, but you know, went to the Elite 11 and looked really good too. And the reason why he's a 3-star, not a 5-star, is because he's 5'10".
4-star now. 4-star.
My case for this has always been Mason Fine. How does a guy who throws for like 50,000 yards in high school, you're going to tell me that no one in the Power 5 can make this kid work because he's like 5'8", 5'9"? Like, come on. And then he goes to North Texas and kills it. Of course he does. And now he's like thriving in Canadian football. Like, at some point, what you do, like, college football is a lot better at this than the NFL is, where like what you do matters a lot more than like your measurables and your tools. But like, at some point, like, you know, and we're probably overstating it on the quarterbacks. I think in other positions, it gets a little more complicated where, like, listen, I don't care if you played 1A 6-man ball in Oklahoma and had 200 sacks and you're a defensive end that's, you know, 5'8", you know, 210. Like, that's going to be a problem for you. But like, you know, I think guys that are really productive and are under recruited, I think is a problem in college.
But it's just not, I mean, how good you are isn't only associated with how big your body is and how fast you can run. Obviously, those things are important, and the reason why the rankings equate to more wins is because if you have bigger, faster, better players, you're going to win more games. But there are also prototypical guys who can be awesome in college, like made for college type players that can help you win a lot of football games that will pay dividends. So it is an interesting thought process. But the one question I would have back is, how do you actually rate players for college, not the NFL? Like, it'd be like a really messy grading system, I think. And also too, they're really, really accurate. You know, people say that it's an inexact science, but like, if you go look at the, you know, composite rankings, there are the Texases of the world. There are the A&Ms of the world. But for the most part, there's a direct correlation between how much talent you have on your roster and how good you're going to be. And that makes them pretty accurate. So anyway, I got to say, this was, I think, maybe one of my top 3 favorite shows that we've done since we came back. That was fun. What did you guys think of the Sound-Off?
I love it. I'm excited for it. I want to hear more of you guys talk some ball with us. And Ari, I really I don't know if you guys remember college football, but there are a lot of games that make a lot of people very angry. I'm very excited to get like our rants of the year. Listen, interesting, insightful questions are winners, but like,
be angry, be yourself.
At some point, we're going to get some hilarious ones. So I'm looking forward to it. Drop us your voicemails, folks.
Yeah, and if you want to call me an asshole on the thing, then do it. We'll play it. I'm not afraid of that. You want to say I can't stand that guy? Yeah. But yes, thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this. And I honestly, like you said, I can't wait. And hopefully anybody who was hesitant to leave a voicemail, because it's just kind of an odd thing to do in 2023. Like, leaving a voicemail with anybody is just so off-putting now, isn't it? Like, I don't even call anybody anymore, let alone leaving.
I get the transcripts texted to me, so I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Ari Wasserman. I'm just calling to touch base here. If you can give me a call back at 480-204-4436 at your earliest convenience, I would greatly appreciate it.
Now I want to know whose number, Ari.
If you do that now, if you're a serial killer. That was a fake number.
281-330-8004.
Ari, it's a fake number to you, but some pizza place in whatever the 480 area code is getting blown up.
I started off 48020 are the first 5 for me. So, you know, if you can follow I was like, don't do it. Yeah. But like I'm super excited about that. 867-5309 somebody. Yes. That was so much fun, guys, and I can't wait once we get into the meat of the schedule and next
Yes,
week
sir.
to do
Next
this
week,
to have
great week one.
just please call in and leave voicemails because without you guys we can't do it. Again, the number is 316-462-9852. 316-4682 316-462-9852. It's my money and I want it now.
It's that math again, Ari.
Until
Reading numbers
Saturday,
counts as
phone
math.
voicemail is on the screen. If you're more of a visual person, 316-462-9852. Leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast, and if you're looking for a host that can just simply read and recite a phone number, find another show because it's not on this one.
And I'd like to apologize to whatever Scottsdale business already got blown up. But
yeah,
we'll see.
316-462-9852.
Good job.
316-462-9852. Thanks for watching. That was Until Saturday's first Sound Off show.